The sound of horses whinnying in distress was what woke Thomas Morgan from his sleep, and he grabbed his rifle before his boots, stumbling through the darkness of his small ranch house toward the barn where something had clearly spooked his animals. The moon hung low over the Nevada plains that September night in 1882, casting long shadows across the dusty ground as Thomas pushed open the barn door with his shoulder, rifle raised and ready for whatever predator or thief had disturbed the peace. What he found instead made him lower his weapon slowly, his breath catching in his throat at the sight before him. A woman lay curled in the hay beside his mare's stall, her dress torn and covered in dust, her dark hair matted with what looked like dried blood near her temple. She was breathing, at least, her chest rising and falling in shallow movements that told him she was alive but far from well. Thomas set his rifle against the barn wall and approached carefully, not wanting to startle her if she woke suddenly. "Miss," he said quietly, kneeling down beside her. "Miss, can you hear me?" Her eyes flew open, wild and terrified, and she scrambled backward into the hay, her hand reaching for something at her waist that wasn't there. Thomas held up both hands, showing he meant no harm. "Easy now," he said in the same gentle tone he used with spooked horses. "You are on my property, but I am not going to hurt you. Looks like you are already hurt enough as it is." The woman stared at him for a long moment, her green eyes assessing him in the dim light filtering through the barn slats. She was younger than he had first thought, probably not much past 20, with a face that would have been beautiful if not for the fear and exhaustion written across it. Her dress, though damaged, had once been fine quality, suggesting she was not some common drifter. "One night," she said finally, her voice hoarse and cracking. "Then I will be gone. Please, just one night." Thomas studied her, noting the desperation in her voice, the way her whole body trembled despite the warm Nevada night. Whatever trouble she was running from, it was serious enough to have driven her to collapse in a stranger's barn. "You need a doctor," he said, gesturing to the wound on her head. "And probably food and water. How long have you been out here?" "I do not need a doctor," she said quickly, too quickly. "Just somewhere to sleep until dawn. Then I will be gone and you can forget you ever saw me, please." There was something in her eyes that made Thomas pause. He had seen that look before, in the eyes of wounded animals that knew they were being hunted. This woman was running from something or someone, and she believed with absolute certainty that her life depended on not being found. "All right," he said slowly. "One night. But you will take that one night in the house, not in my barn. I have got a spare room and I can heat up some stew from supper. After that, if you still want to leave at dawn, I will not stop you." "The barn is fine," she insisted, but her body swayed as she tried to stand, and Thomas reached out instinctively to steady her. She flinched at his touch but did not pull away, which told him just how weak she really was. "The barn is not fine," Thomas said firmly. "I am not in the habit of letting injured women sleep with my horses when I have got a perfectly good house right there. Now you can walk, or I can carry you, but either way you are coming inside." She looked at him for another long moment, then nodded slightly, accepting his arm as support. Together, they made their slow way across the yard to his ranch house, a modest structure he had built himself 3 years ago when he had first claimed this land. It was not much, just 4 rooms and a porch, but it was honest work and honest living, which was more than Thomas could say for his life before he had come west. Inside, he lit a lamp and helped her into a chair at his kitchen table. In the better light, he could see more details: the bruises on her arms, the way she held her left side as if her ribs hurt, the dried blood that streaked her dark hair. Someone had done this to her, and recently. "My name is Thomas Morgan," he said, moving to the stove to heat up the pot of stew he had made earlier. "This is my ranch about 15 miles outside of Kennewick. You are in Nevada in case you lost track of where you were going." "Katherine," she said after a pause. "Katherine Sutton." "Well, Miss Sutton, I am going to get you some food and water, and then I am going to take a look at that head wound, whether you like it or not. After that, you can tell me as much or as little as you want about how you ended up in my barn." Katherine nodded, seeming to accept this arrangement. Thomas worked quietly, ladling stew into a bowl and pumping fresh water from the sink. When he set both in front of her, she fell on the food like a starving animal, eating so fast he worried she might make herself sick. "Slow down," he said gently. "It is not going anywhere, and you will just bring it back up if you eat that fast after going hungry." She forced herself to slow, though he could see it cost her to do so. While she ate, Thomas wet a clean cloth and approached her carefully. "I need to clean that wound on your head," he said. "May I?" Katherine hesitated, then nodded. Thomas had tended plenty of injuries on himself and his horses over the years, so he knew how to be gentle as he carefully cleaned away the dried blood. The wound itself was not deep, probably caused by a blow from something blunt, and it had already started to heal. What worried him more were the bruises he could see darkening her arms and the careful way she moved, suggesting other injuries beneath her clothes. "Someone did this to you," he said quietly. It was not a question. Katherine was silent for a long moment, her hands wrapped around the bowl of stew. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "My husband." Thomas felt his jaw tighten. He had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made anger flare hot in his chest. He had no tolerance for men who raised their hands to women, having grown up watching his own father do the same to his mother until the day Thomas had grown big enough to stop it. "Ex-husband, I hope," he said. "Not yet," Katherine said. "I ran. 3 days ago I just ran. I took a horse from his stable and rode until it went lame, then I walked. I do not even know if I am going in the right direction anymore. I just needed to get away from him, from that house, from everything." "He will be looking for you," Thomas said. "I know." Katherine's voice was flat, resigned. "That is why I can only stay one night. If he finds me here, if he finds out you helped me, he will kill you too. Victor does not tolerate anyone interfering with what he considers his property, and he considers me his property." "Let him come," Thomas said, the words coming out harder than he intended. "I have dealt with men like your husband before. This is my land, and I decide who stays and who goes." "You do not understand," Katherine said, looking up at him with those green eyes that now seemed haunted by more than just physical pain. "Victor Sutton is not just some angry husband. He owns half of Reno. He has men working for him, dangerous men. If he finds out I am here, he will burn this place to the ground with both of us in it." Thomas sat down across from her at the table. "Then we will make sure he does not find out. But Miss Sutton, you cannot keep running forever. Eventually, you need to stand and fight, or you will spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder." "I do not know how to fight him," Katherine said, and for the first time he heard tears in her voice. "I do not have money. I do not have anywhere to go. My own family disowned me when I married Victor against their wishes. They told me he was no good, that the rumors about his business dealings were true, but I was 18 and stupid and thought I was in love. By the time I realized what kind of man he really was, it was too late." "It is never too late," Thomas said firmly. "You got yourself this far, did you not? That takes courage, more courage than most people ever have to find. You just need to rest now, get your strength back. Then we will figure out what comes next." "I told you," Katherine said. "One night." "That is all. I cannot put you in danger like this. And I am telling you that you are welcome to stay as long as you need," Thomas countered. "Look, Miss Sutton, I understand you are trying to protect me, and I appreciate that. But I am not some helpless homesteader who is going to fold at the first sign of trouble. I can take care of myself, and I can help you if you will let me." Katherine stared at him, clearly torn between her need for help and her fear of what accepting that help might cost. Finally, she nodded slowly. "One night," she repeated. "We can talk more in the morning, but if I think he is getting close, I am leaving immediately. I will not have your death on my conscience." "Fair enough," Thomas agreed, though he had no intention of letting her run off alone if trouble did come calling. "Now let me show you to the spare room. You look like you are about to fall asleep in that chair." He was right. Katherine could barely keep her eyes open as he led her to the small room he used for storage. It was not much, just a bed and a dresser, but the bed had clean sheets, and the room had a door that locked from the inside, which seemed to ease some of Katherine's tension. "Thank you," she said softly, pausing in the doorway. "I know I do not have any right to ask for your help, but thank you for giving it anyway." "Everyone has a right to be safe in their own skin," Thomas said. "You get some sleep, Miss Sutton." Things always look a little less hopeless in the morning light. He left her there and returned to his own room, but sleep did not come easily. Thomas lay in his bed, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch at night, and wondered what he had gotten himself into. He was a simple rancher, trying to build an honest life after leaving behind a complicated past in Missouri. The last thing he needed was to get tangled up in someone else's troubles, especially troubles that involved a dangerous man with resources and connections. But when he closed his eyes, all he could see was Katherine's face, those green eyes filled with fear and desperate hope. He had meant what he said. Everyone deserved to be safe. If this Victor Sutton thought he could terrorize a woman into submission, then he was about to learn that not everyone in Nevada was afraid of money and influence. Morning came sooner than Thomas would have liked, the sun streaming through his window and pulling him from a restless sleep. He dressed quickly and headed to the kitchen, half expecting to find Katherine gone despite her promise to stay the night. But when he reached the kitchen, she was there, standing at the stove with her back to him. "I hope you do not mind," she said without turning around. "I found coffee and thought I would make some. It is the least I can do after you took me in." "I do not mind at all," Thomas said, surprised and oddly pleased that she had stayed. In the morning light, with her hair somewhat cleaned and brushed, wearing one of his old shirts over her damaged dress, Katherine looked less like a terrified fugitive and more like a flesh and blood woman. A beautiful one, he could not help but notice, with strong features and an air of determination that the previous night's exhaustion had hidden. "How are you feeling?" he asked, moving to the table. "Better," Katherine admitted, pouring coffee into 2 tin cups. "Sore, but better. Sleeping in a real bed makes more difference than I remembered." They sat together at the table, sipping coffee as the sun continued to rise outside. Thomas found himself studying her in the growing light, noting details he had missed before. The way her hands shook slightly when she lifted her cup, the dark circles under her eyes that spoke of many sleepless nights, the way she startled at every small sound from outside. "I have been thinking," Katherine said finally, breaking the comfortable silence, "about what you said last night, about standing and fighting. And I do not know if I can," she said honestly. "Victor has everything, money, power, connections. I have nothing except the clothes on my back, and those are barely holding together. What kind of fight would that be? The kind that matters," Thomas said. "Look, I am not going to pretend I know all the details of your situation. But I know this. Bullies rely on people being too afraid to stand up to them. Your husband has probably been counting on you being too scared to ever leave, too convinced of his power to ever fight back. The fact that you ran proves he was wrong about that. Maybe he is wrong about other things too. Maybe, Katherine said, but she did not sound convinced. Or maybe I am just delaying the inevitable. Even if I could somehow divorce him, even if I could prove what he has done to me, where would I go? What would I do? I have no skills except playing the piano and managing a household. Those are not exactly useful talents for a woman alone in Nevada. You would be surprised what talents prove useful, Thomas said. And you are not alone, not anymore. Katherine looked at him sharply. Thomas, I appreciate your kindness, I really do, but you cannot get involved in this. You do not know what Victor is capable of. Then tell me, Thomas said. Help me understand what we are up against. For a long moment, Katherine was silent, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Then, slowly, she began to talk. I met Victor 4 years ago in San Francisco, she said. I was 18, freshly finished with boarding school, and he was this sophisticated older man who showed me attention. He was 28, successful, charming. My parents tried to warn me that his business dealings were questionable, that there were rumors he was involved in all sorts of illegal activities, but I would not listen. I thought they just did not want me to be happy. She paused, taking a shaky breath before continuing. We married quickly, against my family's wishes. They disowned me for it, told me not to come back until I was ready to admit I had made a mistake. I was too proud, too sure that I had made the right choice. For the first few months, everything seemed wonderful. Victor was attentive, generous, everything a new bride could want. When did it change? Thomas asked gently. Gradually, Katherine said. First it was just small things. Comments about my appearance, my behavior, my friends. Then he started limiting who I could see, where I could go. He said it was for my own protection, that the world was dangerous for a woman of my station. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Her voice grew harder, bitter. The first time he hit me was about 6 months after the wedding. I had contradicted him in front of one of his business associates. Nothing major, just a small correction about a date. But after the associate left, Victor backhanded me so hard I fell. Then he apologized, said he had been under stress, that it would never happen again. Of course, it did happen again. And again. Until it was not even about me doing anything wrong anymore. It was just about him maintaining control. Thomas felt his hands clenching into fists under the table, anger coursing through him at the casual cruelty she described. Why did you not leave sooner? Where would I have gone? Katherine asked. My family had disowned me. I had no money of my own. Victor controlled everything, and he made it very clear what would happen if I ever tried to leave. He said he would find me anywhere I went, that he had friends in every city and town from San Francisco to St. Louis. He said if I ever embarrassed him by leaving, he would make sure I regretted it for however long I had left to live. But you left anyway, Thomas said. I had to, Katherine said simply. 3 days ago, he beat me worse than he ever had before. I thought he was going to kill me. When he finally stopped, when he left the room, something in me just broke. I could not do it anymore. I could not spend one more day in that house, living in fear, waiting for the next blow to fall. So I waited until he left for one of his business meetings, and I took his fastest horse and I ran. That took a lot of courage, Thomas said quietly. It took desperation, Katherine corrected. Courage would have been leaving years ago. This was just survival instinct finally overriding fear. They sat in silence for a moment, Thomas processing everything she had told him. The situation was worse than he had thought, but not insurmountable. Men like Victor Sutton relied on their victims feeling helpless and alone. Well, Katherine was not alone anymore, whether she wanted to accept that or not. Here is what I think, Thomas said finally. You need time to heal and to figure out your next move. Stay here at least for a few days. My ranch is remote enough that no one is going to stumble across you by accident, and I can keep watch for any strangers asking questions in town. In the meantime, we can work on a plan for what comes next." "Thomas, I already told you. I know what you told me," Thomas interrupted. "One night then you would be gone. But Miss Sutton, you are in no condition to be traveling alone. You are injured, you are exhausted, and you do not even have a horse anymore. Give yourself a few days to recover. Let me help you, please." Katherine looked at him, and he could see the war being waged behind her eyes. The need to accept help versus the fear of putting someone else in danger. The desperate hope that maybe she could stop running for just a little while versus the resignation that she would be running for the rest of her life. "A few days," she said finally. "But at the first sign that Victor is getting close, I am leaving. I mean it, Thomas. I will not let you die because of my mistakes." "Deal," Thomas said, extending his hand across the table. Katherine hesitated, then shook it, her hand small and delicate in his calloused palm. The touch lasted only a moment, but Thomas felt something pass between them, a connection that went beyond simple charity or gratitude. The next few days fell into an easy rhythm. Thomas went about his usual ranch work, tending to his horses and cattle, mending fences, and making the repairs that always seemed to need doing. Katherine stayed close to the house, helping where she could despite her injuries. She cleaned, cooked, and even attempted to do laundry, though Thomas had to show her how to work the washboard properly. "I always had servants to do this," she admitted, scrubbing at one of his shirts with more enthusiasm than skill. Victor insisted on maintaining a full household staff. Said it was important for his image. "Must have been a different world," Thomas said, watching her work. He was supposed to be fixing a broken chair, but he found himself getting distracted by the way the sunlight caught in her dark hair, the determination on her face as she attacked the simple task with unexpected fervor. "It was," Katherine agreed, "but not necessarily a better one. All that luxury came with a price, and I was the one paying it." As the days passed, Thomas found himself looking forward to the moments they spent together. Katherine had a quick wit and a sharp intelligence that her circumstances had never quite managed to crush. She asked him about his life, his past, and why he had come west, and he found himself telling her things he had never told anyone else. "I grew up in Missouri," he said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the Nevada plains. "My father was a farmer and not a particularly successful one. He drank too much and had a temper when he did. My mother bore the brunt of it most of the time, but as I got older, I started stepping in. By the time I was 16, I was big enough to stop him when he got violent." "Is that why you left?" Katherine asked. "Partly," Thomas admitted. "After my mother died when I was 20, there was not much keeping me there. My father and I could barely stand to be in the same room together, so I packed up what little I owned and headed west. I worked as a ranch hand for a few years, saved my money, and eventually bought this land. It is not much, but it is mine. I built it with my own 2 hands, and no one can take that away from me." "It is more than not much," Katherine said softly. "It is freedom. It is independence. It is everything I have been trying to find." Their eyes met in the fading light, and Thomas felt that connection again, stronger this time. Katherine must have felt it too because she looked away quickly, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I should start dinner," she said, standing abruptly. "You must be hungry after working all day." Thomas let her go, but his eyes followed her into the house. He was developing feelings for her, he realized, feelings that went well beyond simple protectiveness or charity. Katherine Sutton, with her bruised face and haunted eyes and unexpected strength, was getting under his skin in a way no woman ever had before. It was dangerous, he knew. She was married, however much she might wish otherwise. She was running from a powerful man who would not hesitate to hurt anyone who helped her. And she had been clear from the beginning that she was only staying temporarily, that she would be moving on as soon as she was able. But knowing all that did not stop his heart from lifting every time she smiled, did not stop him from finding excuses to be near her, did not stop him from lying awake at night thinking about what it might be like if she stayed. A week after Katherine had arrived, Thomas rode into Kennewick for supplies. It was a risk, leaving her alone at the ranch, but they needed food and other essentials, and he wanted to get a sense of whether anyone had been asking questions about a missing woman. Kennewick was a small town, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Thomas tied his horse outside the general store and headed inside, nodding to a few familiar faces. The store owner, a portly man named Henry Chen, greeted him with a smile. "Thomas Morgan, good to see you," Henry said. "What brings you to town today?" "Need to stock up on a few things," Thomas said, pulling out his list. "Coffee, flour, sugar, some fabric if you have got any. My shirts are starting to fall apart." "I have got all that," Henry said, moving to gather the items. "You know, you have been coming in here for 3 years now, and I still have not seen you with a woman. When are you going to settle down and start a family?" "When I find the right woman," Thomas said easily, though Katherine's face flashed through his mind. "Have you heard any news lately? Anything unusual happening around these parts?" Henry paused in his gathering, his expression growing more serious. "Funny you should ask. There have been some strangers in town the past few days. Well-dressed men, not the usual ranch hands or prospectors we see. They have been asking questions, showing around a photograph of a woman. Said she was the wife of some rich fellow from Reno, that she ran off and he is worried about her." Thomas felt his stomach tighten but kept his expression neutral. "That's so. What kind of questions?" "Just if anyone had seen her, if any strangers had passed through. I told them I had not seen anyone matching that description, and most everyone else said the same. But one of them, the leader I guess, he seemed real determined, said there was a reward for information leading to her return." Henry looked at Thomas curiously. "You have not seen anyone unusual out your way, have you?" "No," Thomas said, the lie coming easily despite the guilt that accompanied it. "My ranch is pretty isolated. If someone passed through, I probably would not even know about it." "Well, keep an eye out anyway," Henry said. "Something about those men did not sit right with me. Too smooth, too polished. And the way they talked about finding this woman, it did not sound like concern to me. Sounded more like a hunter talking about tracking down prey." "I will keep watch," Thomas promised, his mind already racing. Victor Sutton's men were in Kennewick, which meant they were getting closer. He needed to get back to the ranch, needed to warn Katherine, needed to figure out their next move. He paid for his supplies quickly and loaded them onto his horse, his eyes scanning the street for any sign of the well-dressed strangers Henry had mentioned. He did not see anyone who fit that description, but that did not mean they were not watching. Men like Victor Sutton did not get rich and powerful by being stupid or careless. The ride back to the ranch felt twice as long as usual. Thomas pushed his horse harder than he normally would, urgent need driving him forward. When he finally reached his property and saw Katherine hanging laundry on the line behind the house, relief flooded through him. She was safe. For now. Thomas. Katherine called out, noticing his hurried approach. "What is wrong? You look like you have seen a ghost." He dismounted quickly, his eyes still scanning the horizon. "We need to talk. Inside." Katherine's face paled, but she followed him into the house without question. Once they were both inside with the door closed, Thomas told her about his conversation with Henry Chen, about the men asking questions in town. "They are here," Katherine said, her voice hollow. "I knew they would come eventually, but I hoped I would have more time." "You do have more time," Thomas said firmly. "Those men might be in Kennewick, but that does not mean they know you are here. Henry said most people claimed they had not seen anyone matching your description. We are 15 miles out of town on isolated land. As long as you stay close to the house and out of sight when I have visitors, there is no reason for them to connect you to me." "Unless someone saw me arrive," Katherine said. "Unless someone mentioned seeing a strange woman riding a lame horse a week ago. Thomas, these men are professionals. If Victor sent them, they will not stop until they find me. You need to let me go before they trace me back here." "I am not letting you go anywhere," Thomas said, surprising himself with the vehemence in his voice. "Katherine, listen to me. Running is not going to solve this problem. These men will keep looking, and eventually they will find you, and you will be alone when they do. At least here you have someone who will stand with you." "Why?" Katherine asked, her green eyes searching his face. "Why would you risk everything for me? You barely know me." Thomas stepped closer to her, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes, close enough to smell the lavender soap she had found in his washroom. "Because I have seen what happens when good people stand by and do nothing while someone suffers," he said quietly. "I watched my mother endure years of abuse because no one would help her, because everyone thought it was not their business. I swore I would never be that person, never be someone who could help but chose not to. And because," he paused, wondering if he should say what he was thinking, then decided he had nothing to lose by honesty, "because in the week you have been here, you have become more than just someone I am helping. You have become someone I care about." Katherine's breath caught, her eyes widening. "Thomas, you cannot say things like that. I am married. I am in danger. I have nothing to offer you except trouble." "I do not care about any of that," Thomas said. "And before you say anything else, I am not asking you for anything. I am not expecting anything from you. I am just telling you the truth. You matter to me, Katherine. Your safety matters to me. Your happiness matters to me. So I am not going to let you run off alone to face these men. We are going to figure this out together." Tears welled up in Katherine's eyes, and before Thomas could react, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, pressing her face against his chest. He could feel her shaking, could feel the wetness of her tears soaking through his shirt. Slowly, carefully, he put his arms around her, holding her as she cried. They stood like that for a long time, Thomas offering silent comfort while Katherine released what seemed like years of pent-up fear and pain. Finally, she pulled back slightly, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. "No one has ever said something like that to me before," she said softly. "No one has ever made me feel like I mattered, not for who I could be or what I could do for them, but just for being me." "Then you have been around the wrong people," Thomas said, reaching up to gently wipe a tear from her cheek with his thumb. The gesture was intimate, more intimate than he probably had any right to be, but Katherine did not pull away. Instead, she leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and unspoken feelings. Thomas knew he should step back, should maintain proper distance, but he could not seem to make himself move. Katherine opened her eyes, and the look in them made his breath catch. "Thomas," she whispered, and it was both a question and an invitation. He kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But instead, Katherine leaned into the kiss, her hands coming up to rest against his chest. The kiss deepened, months or maybe years of loneliness and longing pouring out from both of them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Thomas rested his forehead against Katherine's. "I am sorry," he said. "I should not have done that." "Do not apologize," Katherine said, her fingers tangling in his shirt. Please do not apologize for the first good thing that has happened to me in years. You are still married, Thomas said, forcing himself to voice the reality they were both trying to ignore. And I do not want to be another man who takes from you without your full consent. You are nothing like Victor, Katherine said fiercely. Nothing. He took from me with force and fear. You are offering me something I have never had before, choice. The choice to be seen as more than property. The choice to be cared for as a person. The choice to feel something other than terror. What do you choose? Thomas asked quietly. Katherine looked at him for a long moment, her green eyes searching his face. Then she smiled, a real smile, the first truly happy expression he had seen from her. I choose this, she said. I choose you. I choose to stop running, at least for now, and I choose to fight because you are right. I am tired of being afraid. I am tired of letting Victor control my life even from a distance. I want to be free, truly free, and if that means standing and fighting, then that is what I will do. We will do it together, Thomas promised, pulling her close again. Whatever comes, we face it together. That night they made plans. Katherine told Thomas everything she knew about Victor's business operations, the men who worked for him, the properties he owned. Thomas listened carefully, his mind working through possibilities and strategies. The problem is proving what he has done, Katherine said as they sat at the kitchen table, papers spread out before them. Even if I could get a divorce on grounds of cruelty, I would need witnesses or evidence, and everyone who works for Victor is too afraid of him to testify. What about the injuries he has given you over the years? Thomas asked. Surely doctors saw some of them. Victor always made sure I saw his personal physician, a man firmly in his pocket, Katherine said. He would document the injuries but always attributed them to my own clumsiness. Victor was very careful that way. He made sure there was always a plausible explanation for anything anyone might see. Then we need to find another way, Thomas said. You mentioned his business dealings were questionable. What exactly does he do? Officially, he owns several saloons and a hotel in Reno, Katherine said. But I know there is more to it than that. I have heard him talking with his associates late at night. They discuss shipments, territories, people who need to be persuaded or eliminated. I think he is involved in smuggling, maybe even worse, but I never had any proof, just overheard conversations. That might be enough, Thomas said slowly. If we could get word to the federal marshals about what you know, they might be willing to investigate. And if they do investigate, if they find evidence of criminal activity, Victor would have bigger problems than worrying about a runaway wife. He would know I was the one who told them, Katherine said. He would come after me harder than ever. Not if you were under federal protection, Thomas countered. Look, I am not saying this is a perfect plan or even a particularly good one, but it is something. It gives us options beyond just hiding out here and hoping those men do not find you. Katherine was quiet for a long moment, considering. I would need to go to the federal marshal's office. I would need to tell them everything, face questioning, possibly testify if it comes to trial. That means going public with what Victor has done, exposing myself to judgment and gossip. It also means taking back your power, Thomas said gently. It means being the one who decides what happens next instead of just reacting to Victor's moves. I know it is scary, but Katherine, you are one of the strongest people I have ever met. You survived 4 years of abuse and still managed to keep enough of yourself intact to run when you saw your chance. You can do this. Can I? Katherine asked, her voice small. Because most days I do not feel strong, Thomas. I feel broken and scared and like I am barely holding myself together. Strength is not about never being scared, Thomas said, reaching across the table to take her hand. It is about being scared and doing what needs to be done anyway. You have already proven you have that kind of strength. Now you just need to use it one more time." Katherine squeezed his hand, drawing strength from the contact. "If we do this, if we go to the marshals, Victor will find out where I have been staying. He will know you helped me. His men will come here." "Let them come," Thomas said. "This is my land and I know every inch of it. I have guns, I have ammunition, and I have something Victor's hired men do not have. A real reason to fight. I am not afraid of them." "You should be," Katherine said. "These are not ordinary ranch hands or drifters. These are men who kill for money and do not think twice about it." "Then we will be careful," Thomas said. "But we are not going to let fear of what might happen stop us from doing what is right. Tomorrow, we ride to Carson City. The federal marshal's office is there, and it is far enough from Reno that we should be able to get in and out without Victor's men spotting us." "Tomorrow," Katherine echoed, looking suddenly pale. "The longer we wait, the more time those men have to search," Thomas said. "And the more time Victor has to cover his tracks. If we are going to do this, we need to do it now, while we still have the element of surprise." Katherine took a deep breath, then nodded. "All right, tomorrow, but Thomas, promise me something, anything. If this goes wrong, if Victor's men come and it looks like they are going to win, you run. You save yourself. Do not try to be a hero for me, promise." "I cannot promise that," Thomas said honestly. "Because if it came down to that, I would not leave you. I could not live with myself if I did." "Thomas, no," he said firmly. "Katherine, I know this is fast. I know we have only known each other a week. But I also know that what I feel for you is real. I care about you too much to ever abandon you when you need me, so I am not going to make a promise I cannot keep. We are in this together, for better or worse." Tears filled Katherine's eyes again, but this time they were different. Not tears of pain or fear, but of something that looked almost like hope. "I do not deserve you," she whispered. "Yes, you do," Thomas said. "You deserve someone who sees you for who you really are, who values you, who stands by you. And I plan to be that person for as long as you will let me." That night, Katherine did not sleep in the spare room. Instead, she and Thomas lay together in his bed, fully clothed, simply holding each other through the darkness. It was intimate without being improper, a comfort they both desperately needed. "Tell me about your dreams," Katherine said quietly, her head resting on Thomas's chest. "What do you want from life, beyond just surviving day to day?" Thomas thought about that for a moment. "I want this ranch to thrive," he said finally. "I want to build something that lasts, something I can be proud of. I want to wake up each morning knowing that the work I am doing matters, that I am living an honest life. And I want someone to share it with. Not just anyone, but someone who sees this life the way I do. Someone who understands that happiness does not come from wealth or status but from simple things. Good work, clear conscience, love freely given." "That sounds perfect," Katherine murmured. "Do you think such a life is possible for someone like me?" "After everything I have been through, after all the mistakes I have made." "Everyone makes mistakes," Thomas said, his hand gently stroking her hair. "What defines us is not the mistakes but how we respond to them. You recognize that your marriage to Victor was a mistake, and you did something about it. That takes courage. As for whether happiness is possible for you, I think it absolutely is. I think you can have everything you want, Katherine. You just have to believe you deserve it." "I am starting to," Katherine admitted. "Being here with you, it is showing me what life could be like, what it should be like. I have never felt safer than I do right now lying here with you." "Is that strange?" "No," Thomas said. "It is not strange at all." They talked long into the night, sharing stories and dreams, learning the small details that turned strangers into something more. Thomas learned that Katherine loved to read, that her favorite color was blue like the Nevada sky. that she had always wanted to learn to ride a horse properly, instead of just sitting side saddle like a proper lady. Katherine learned that Thomas had a younger sister he had not seen in years, that he secretly wrote poetry though he had never shown it to anyone, that his favorite time of day was dawn when the world felt full of possibility. As the first light of morning began to creep through the window, they finally fell asleep, still holding each other, both drawing strength from the connection they were building. They woke late, the sun already high in the sky. Thomas dressed quickly while Katherine prepared a fast breakfast. Neither of them spoke much, the weight of what they were about to do pressing down on them. The ride to Carson City took most of the day. Thomas kept them to back trails and lesser-known paths, avoiding the main roads where they might encounter Victor's men. Katherine rode behind him on his horse, her arms wrapped around his waist, her face pressed against his back. Carson City was larger than Kennewick, but still small by the standards of eastern cities. The federal marshal's office was easy to find, a sturdy building near the center of town bearing the official seal of the United States government. Thomas helped Katherine dismount, noting how her hands shook slightly. "You can do this," he said quietly. "I will be right there with you." "I know," Katherine said, straightening her shoulders and lifting her chin. "Let us go." The marshal on duty was a weathered man in his 50s named James Hartford. He listened carefully as Katherine told her story, his expression growing grimmer with each detail she revealed. Thomas watched the marshal's face, trying to gauge his reaction, hoping they had not made a terrible mistake in coming here. When Katherine finished, Marshal Hartford sat back in his chair, his fingers steepled together. "Miss, that is quite a story," he said. "And if even half of what you are saying is true, your husband is a very dangerous man. But I have to ask, do you have any proof of these criminal activities you are describing? Overheard conversations are not enough to build a case on." "I know where he keeps his business records," Katherine said, her voice steady despite the fear Thomas could see in her eyes. "In his home office in Reno, there is a safe hidden behind a painting. I have seen him access it many times. If those records document his illegal activities, they would be there." "That safe would require a warrant to access," Marshal Hartford said, "and getting a warrant requires probable cause, which we do not have based solely on your testimony." "What about the abuse?" Thomas asked. "Is that not enough for at least a divorce?" "That is a matter for civil court, not federal jurisdiction," the marshal said. "I am sorry, but unless we can find concrete evidence of federal crimes, there is not much I can do about a man mistreating his wife. The law sees that as a domestic matter." Katherine's face fell, and Thomas felt anger rising in his chest. "So you are saying that even though she is telling you about a man involved in smuggling and possibly murder, you cannot do anything because the law does not care that he beats his wife?" "I am saying the law has limitations," Marshal Hartford said, but his tone suggested he was not happy about it either. "However, there might be another option. If we could get someone inside Victor Sutton's operation, someone who could gather evidence of these criminal activities, then we would have grounds for a warrant and an arrest." "You mean an informant," Thomas said. "Or better yet, someone he trusts," the marshal said, looking at Katherine meaningfully. "Miss Sutton, I understand you are frightened of your husband. But if you were willing to return to him, to pretend your absence was a temporary lapse in judgment, you might be able to access those records you mentioned. Copy them, bring them to us, give us what we need to build a case." "Absolutely not," Thomas said before Katherine could respond. "You are asking her to put herself back in the hands of a man who has beaten her repeatedly, who she believes would kill her if he knew she had betrayed him. That is not an option." "It might be the only option," Marshal Hartford said. "Look, I understand your protective instincts, Mr. Morgan. But Miss Sutton is a grown woman capable of making her own decisions. And if she really wants to be free of this man, if she wants justice, this might be the only way to get it. There has to be another way, Thomas insisted, but even as he said it, he could see Katherine's expression changing, could see her considering the possibility. No, Katherine said quietly. The marshal is right. This might be the only way. Katherine, you cannot be seriously considering this, Thomas said, turning to face her. Going back to Victor would be suicide. It would be justice, Katherine corrected. Thomas, I appreciate you trying to protect me, but I am tired of running. I am tired of being a victim. If I can do something, anything, to make sure Victor pays for what he has done, not just to me but to everyone he has hurt, then I have to try. I cannot let you do this, Thomas said desperately. Please, there has to be another way. Katherine reached out and took his hand. You said I was strong enough to fight. You said I had the courage to do what needed to be done. Were you wrong about that? No, but I did not mean you should walk straight into danger, Thomas said. I meant we should fight together with a real plan, with backup, with something resembling safety. There is no safety, not while Victor is free, Katherine said. You know that as well as I do. His men are already in Kennewick looking for me. It is only a matter of time before they find your ranch, before they connect me to you. This way, at least I might be able to end this permanently. Marshal Hartford looked between them. I would not send you in alone, he said to Katherine. We would establish protocols, ways for you to get messages to us, safe signals if you needed extraction, and we would move quickly. You get in, get the evidence, get out. A few days at most. A few days of being back in that house with that man, Thomas said, his voice hollow. A few days of pretending everything is fine while he has every opportunity to hurt you or worse. I can do it, Katherine said, though her voice shook slightly. I have survived 4 years. I can survive a few more days if it means finally being free. Thomas wanted to argue more, wanted to forbid her from doing this insane thing, but he could see the determination in her eyes. She had made her decision, and he knew her well enough by now to know that nothing he said would change her mind. If you are going to do this, we do it my way, he said finally, addressing Marshal Hartford. I want multiple check-ins each day. I want a plan for getting her out if things go wrong. And I want to be close by, ready to move if she needs help. That can be arranged, the marshal said. Though you understand, Mr. Morgan, that if Mr. Sutton spots you anywhere near his property, it could jeopardize the entire operation and put Miss Sutton in even more danger. Then he will not spot me, Thomas said grimly. I grew up hunting in Missouri forests. I know how to move unseen and how to wait. I will keep my distance, but I will be there. That is non-negotiable. Marshal Hartford studied him for a moment, then nodded. All right, let us work out the details. They spent the next several hours planning. Katherine would return to Reno and present herself at Victor's home, claiming she had been confused and frightened but had come to her senses. It was a thin story, but they all agreed Victor's arrogance would likely make him believe it. He would want to believe his wife had realized she could not survive without him. Once inside, Katherine would watch for an opportunity to access Victor's safe. The marshal provided her with a small camera, newly developed technology that could photograph documents quickly. She would copy whatever records she could find and get them to one of the marshal's deputies, who would be posing as a tradesman making regular deliveries to houses in Victor's neighborhood. If at any point Katherine felt she was in immediate danger, she was to place a red cloth in her bedroom window. Thomas would be watching from a distance, and if he saw the signal, he would go in to get her. Federal operation be damned. This is insanity, Thomas muttered as they finalized the plans. Complete insanity. "It is the right thing to do," Katherine said quietly. "For the first time since I married Victor, I am doing something right. I am not running away from my problems or hiding from them. I am facing them head on. That has to count for something." "It counts for a lot," Thomas admitted. "I just wish it did not put you in so much danger." That night, they stayed in a small boarding house in Carson City. Thomas paid for 2 rooms to maintain propriety, but Katherine came to his room after dark, knocking softly on his door. "I could not sleep," she said when he opened it. "Tomorrow I go back to Reno, back to Victor, and I do not know when I will see you again. I needed to see you now." Thomas pulled her into the room, closing the door behind her. "I am terrified for you," he admitted. "I know you are strong, I know you can do this, but that does not make it any easier to let you go." "Then do not think of it as letting me go," Katherine said, moving closer to him. "Think of it as me fighting for our future. Because that is what I am doing, Thomas. I am fighting for the chance to be free, to be with you without fear or shame, to build the kind of life you described. I want that more than I have wanted anything." "I want that too," Thomas said, his hands coming up to frame her face. "I know it has only been a week since we met, but Katherine, I am falling in love with you. I need you to know that before you go. I need you to know that someone is waiting for you, someone who believes in you and cares about you and will move heaven and earth to keep you safe." Tears streamed down Katherine's face. "I love you too," she whispered. "I did not think I could feel this way about anyone, did not think I had it in me after everything Victor did. But you showed me I was wrong. You showed me that love does not have to hurt, that it can be gentle and strong at the same time. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that this week with you has been the happiest of my life." They kissed then, pouring all their fear and hope and love into that single moment of connection. When they finally broke apart, both were trembling. "Come back to me," Thomas said. "Promise me you will come back." "I promise," Katherine said. "A few days, that is all. Then this will all be over and we can start our life together. A real life, free from fear and running, I promise." The next morning they took separate routes to Reno. Katherine traveled openly, taking the main road and a hired coach, making no attempt to hide her movements. Thomas followed at a distance, keeping her in sight but staying far enough back that no one would connect them. Reno was a bustling city, grown rich on silver mining and the commerce that followed. Victor Sutton's house was in the finest neighborhood, a large mansion that spoke of wealth and power. Thomas found a position on a nearby hillside where he could watch the house through his spyglass without being seen. It was not close enough to hear what was being said or to intervene quickly if something went wrong, but it was the best he could do without exposing himself. He watched as Katherine approached the front door of the mansion, saw it open, saw her disappear inside. Then there was nothing to do but wait and watch and pray that their plan would work. Inside the mansion, Katherine faced her husband for the first time since she had run. Victor Sutton was a handsome man in his early 30s, tall and well-dressed, with the kind of charm that could make people forget the cruelty in his eyes. When he saw Katherine standing in his foyer, his expression cycled through surprise, anger, and then calculation. "Katherine," he said, his voice dangerously calm, "what an unexpected pleasure. I was beginning to think I would never see you again." "I am sorry," Katherine said, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "I was confused, frightened. I did not know what I was doing, but I have realized my mistake. I have nowhere else to go, Victor. I am your wife. This is where I belong." She saw the satisfaction in his eyes, the pleasure he took in her supposed submission. It made her skin crawl, but she kept her expression meek and apologetic. "I should punish you for the embarrassment you caused me," Victor said, circling her slowly. "Running away like some common servant. Do you know how much time and money I have spent looking for you? How many men I have had searching every dusty town and ranch between here and California?" "I know," Katherine said, keeping her eyes downcast. "And I am truly sorry. I will accept whatever punishment you think appropriate. I just want to come home." Victor studied her for a long moment, and Katherine held her breath, praying her performance was convincing enough. Finally, he nodded. "Very well," he said. "You may stay. But understand this, Katherine. If you ever try to leave me again, I will not be so forgiving. I will find you, and I will make sure you regret ever thinking you could defy me. Do we understand each other?" "Yes," Katherine whispered. "We understand each other perfectly." The first 2 days back in the mansion were a special kind of hell. Katherine had to pretend everything was normal, had to endure Victor's presence and his touches without flinching, had to smile and play the role of the dutiful wife. At night, she lay awake in the bedroom she had once shared with him, every nerve on edge, waiting for the moment when his mask would slip and his fists would fly. But Victor seemed content with her return, pleased to have his possession back where it belonged. He left each day for his business dealings, giving Katherine time to search for an opportunity to access his office safe. On the third day, her chance came. Victor had been called away on urgent business, something about a shipment that had gone wrong. Katherine waited until she heard his carriage leave, then moved quickly to his office. The safe was exactly where she remembered, hidden behind a painting of a fox hunt. Her hands shook as she worked the combination, numbers she had memorized from watching Victor open it countless times. The lock clicked open, and Katherine pulled out stack after stack of documents. The marshal's camera was hidden in her dress pocket, and she worked quickly, photographing page after page of incriminating evidence. Ledgers showing payments to corrupt officials, records of smuggling operations, letters discussing the elimination of business rivals. It was all here, everything they needed to put Victor away for the rest of his life. She was halfway through the documents when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Katherine's heart stopped. Victor was not supposed to be back for hours. She shoved the papers back into the safe, closed it, and repositioned the painting, her hands moving frantically. The office door opened just as she stepped away from the wall. Victor stood in the doorway, his eyes cold and calculating. "Katherine," he said softly, "what are you doing in my office?" "I was looking for a book," Katherine said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "I remembered you had a collection of poetry, and I thought reading might help pass the time." "Did you?" Victor said, moving into the room. "How strange. I do not recall you ever showing interest in my book collection before. And even stranger, my business meeting ended early because I received a tip that my dear wife might not be as repentant as she claimed." Katherine's blood ran cold. Someone had betrayed them. One of the marshal's men, or perhaps just an unlucky coincidence, but either way, her cover was blown. "I do not know what you are talking about," she said, backing away as Victor advanced. "Do not lie to me," Victor said, his voice rising. "I know you have been working with the federal marshals. I know you came back here to spy on me. Did you really think I would not find out? Did you really think I was stupid enough to believe you came crawling back out of love?" "Victor, please," Katherine said, her back hitting the wall. "Let me explain." "There is nothing to explain," Victor said, and then his hand was around her throat, squeezing hard enough to cut off her air. "You betrayed me. You made me look like a fool, and now you are going to pay for it." Katherine clawed at his hands, fighting for breath, her vision starting to go dark around the edges. This was it. She was going to die in this office, and Thomas would never know what happened to her. Then, impossibly, she heard breaking glass and a gunshot. Victor's grip loosened as he turned toward the sound, and Katherine fell to the floor, gasping for air. Through her blurred vision, she saw Thomas climbing through the broken window, his rifle trained on Victor. "Step away from her," Thomas said, his voice deadly calm. "Step away, or I will put a bullet through your head." "You must be the rancher," Victor said, his lips curling into a sneer. "Katherine, you have been keeping company with cowboys now. How far you have fallen." "I said step away," Thomas repeated, cocking the rifle. Victor raised his hands and stepped back, but Katherine could see the calculation in his eyes. He was planning something, waiting for an opening. "Thomas, watch out," she tried to say, but her damaged throat could only produce a hoarse whisper. Victor moved fast, pulling a pistol from his desk drawer. Thomas fired, but Victor had already dropped to the floor. The bullet shattered a lamp instead of finding its target. Victor returned fire, and Thomas dove behind a heavy desk as wood splintered around him. Katherine, still on the floor, saw Victor adjusting his aim, preparing to shoot Thomas while he was pinned down. Without thinking, she grabbed a heavy bookend from a nearby shelf and threw it with all her strength. It caught Victor in the temple, and he staggered, his shot going wide. Thomas used the distraction to rush forward, tackling Victor before he could recover. They struggled, fighting for control of the pistol. Katherine watched in horror, wanting to help but too weak from being choked to do more than crawl toward them. The pistol went off once, twice, and then there was silence. Thomas pushed himself up slowly, breathing hard. Beneath him, Victor lay still, blood spreading across his expensive shirt. The second bullet had found its mark. "Katherine," Thomas said, stumbling toward her. "Katherine, are you all right?" She nodded, unable to speak, and Thomas gathered her into his arms, holding her as footsteps pounded up the stairs. Marshal Hartford and his deputies burst into the room, weapons drawn. "We heard shots," the marshal said, then took in the scene. Victor's body, the broken window, Katherine and Thomas on the floor. "What happened here?" he found out, Katherine managed to whisper. "Someone told him. He tried to kill me. Thomas saved my life." "And the evidence?" Hartford asked. Katherine pulled the small camera from her pocket with shaking hands. "I got it. Everything you need. It is all in here." The next few hours passed in a blur of statements and questions and medical attention. A doctor was called to examine Katherine's throat and confirmed that while she would be sore for days, there was no permanent damage. Victor's body was removed, and Katherine felt nothing but relief as they carried him away. It was over. After 4 years of fear and pain, it was finally over. The federal investigation into Victor Sutton's criminal empire proceeded quickly. The evidence Katherine had gathered was more than enough to indict his business associates and corrupt officials. Several arrests were made, and the newspapers had a field day reporting on the scandal. As for Katherine, she was finally free. With Victor dead, she was no longer married. She had no claim to his money or properties, which were seized by the government as proceeds of criminal activity, but she did not care. She had something far more valuable: her freedom and a future with the man she loved. They returned to Thomas's ranch a week after the confrontation, both still bearing the physical and emotional scars of what had happened, but ready to start building their life together. "It is strange," Katherine said as they stood on the porch watching the sun set over the Nevada plains. "A few weeks ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left except fear and running, and now I have everything I ever wanted." "We have everything," Thomas corrected, wrapping his arm around her waist. "And this is just the beginning, Katherine. We have got our whole lives ahead of us." "I like the sound of that," Katherine said, leaning into his warmth. "Our whole lives, together." 2 months later, on a crisp November morning, Thomas Morgan married Katherine Sutton in the small church in Kennewick. It was a simple ceremony, attended by the few friends and neighbors Thomas had made during his years in Nevada. Katherine wore a simple blue dress she had sewn herself, and Thomas wore his best shirt, freshly laundered and pressed. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, when Thomas kissed his bride for the first time as a married man, Katherine felt tears of joy streaming down her face. This was what marriage was supposed to feel like: partnership, respect, love freely given and gratefully received. The first year of their marriage was one of hard work and simple happiness. Katherine learned to help with the ranch work, proving to be a natural with the horses once Thomas taught her to ride properly. Thomas expanded his herd, using the money he had been saving to purchase more cattle and better equipment. They built something together, a life based on mutual respect and shared dreams. When they argued, which happened occasionally as it does in any marriage, they talked it through instead of resorting to anger or violence. When times were hard, which they sometimes were in the unpredictable Nevada climate, they supported each other instead of placing blame. And through it all, their love deepened and grew, evolving from the intense passion of their first days together into something more enduring and profound. In the spring of 1884, Katherine discovered she was pregnant. She told Thomas one evening after supper, nervously watching his face for his reaction. "A baby," Thomas said, his eyes widening. "We are going to have a baby in about 6 months," Katherine confirmed. "How do you feel about that?" Thomas's answer was to sweep her up in his arms, spinning her around the kitchen while she laughed. "I feel like the luckiest man in Nevada," he said. "Maybe in the whole country. A baby, our baby. Katherine, this is wonderful." The pregnancy was not easy. Katherine suffered from severe morning sickness in the early months, and as she grew larger, the desert heat made her uncomfortable. But Thomas was attentive and caring, helping with household tasks when she was too tired, rubbing her feet when they swelled, talking to their growing child through Katherine's belly. "I never thought I would have this," Katherine said one night as they lay in bed, Thomas's hand resting on her swollen stomach. "A real family, a husband who loves me, a child on the way. It feels like a dream." "It is real," Thomas assured her. "This is our life, Katherine. Our real, honest, beautiful life. And it is only going to get better." Their son was born on a cold December night in 1884. The birth was long and difficult, attended by a midwife from Kennewick who had delivered half the babies in the county. Thomas paced outside the bedroom for hours, listening to Katherine's cries and feeling helpless. But when the midwife finally opened the door and told him he had a healthy son, when he stepped into the room and saw Katherine holding their baby with tears streaming down her face, every moment of worry was forgotten. "He is perfect," Katherine whispered as Thomas sat beside her on the bed, staring in wonder at the tiny life they had created. "Look at him, Thomas. He is perfect." "What should we name him?" Thomas asked, gently touching his son's tiny hand. "I was thinking," Katherine said softly, "we could name him James, after the marshal who helped us. If not for him, we might never have made it here." "James Morgan," Thomas said, testing the name. "I like it. James Thomas Morgan, after the marshal and his father. What do you think, little one?" "Do you like your name?" The baby, as if in answer, wrapped his tiny fingers around Thomas's much larger one and held tight. The years that followed were filled with the kind of simple joys that make a life worth living. James grew into a bright, curious boy with his mother's green eyes and his father's stubborn determination. The ranch prospered, becoming one of the most successful in the region. Thomas and Katherine expanded their home, adding rooms for their growing family. In 1886, they had a daughter they named Sarah, a sweet-tempered child who loved to help her mother in the garden. In 1889, another son arrived whom they named Daniel. Their house, once so quiet, filled with the sounds of children laughing and playing. Katherine sometimes thought about her old life, about the scared young woman who had collapsed in a barn all those years ago. She thought about Victor and the years of pain she had endured. But those memories no longer had power over her. They were part of her past, part of what had shaped her, but they did not define her present. "You ever regret it?" Thomas asked her one evening as they sat on their porch, watching their children play in the yard. "Choosing this life instead of the wealth and status you had before?" "Never," Katherine said without hesitation. "Thomas, I had all the wealth in the world with Victor and I was miserable. Here with you, with our children, with this life we have built together, I have something money cannot buy. I have peace. I have joy. I have love. How could I ever regret that?" Thomas smiled and pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "I love you, Katherine Morgan." "And I love you," Katherine said, resting her hand on his. "Thank you for giving me this life. Thank you for being the man who found me in your barn that night and chose to help instead of turning away. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved." "You saved mine too," Thomas said quietly. "I was just existing before you came along, going through the motions but not really living. You gave me purpose, family, love. We saved each other." As the sun set over the Nevada plains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Thomas and Katherine sat together in comfortable silence, watching their children play. James was 7 now, teaching his younger siblings how to skip stones in the small pond Thomas had dug last summer. Sarah was laughing, her pigtails bouncing as she chased after Daniel, who at 2 was just learning to run properly. "Papa, Mama, watch this," James called out, and they turned their attention to their son as he demonstrated his stone skipping technique. This was happiness, Katherine thought. Not the false happiness that came from expensive dresses and fancy houses, but the real thing. Love, family, simple moments that added up to a beautiful life. She had traveled a long and painful road to get here, but every hardship had been worth it for this. In the years that followed, the Morgan family continued to grow and thrive. James grew into a responsible young man who helped his father run the ranch. Sarah developed her mother's love of books and learning, eventually becoming a teacher in Kennewick. Daniel, the baby of the family, inherited his father's skill with horses and became known throughout Nevada as one of the finest horse trainers in the state. Thomas and Katherine grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1909, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house Katherine and Thomas had built had been expanded several times over the years, growing to accommodate their large and loving family. 25 years, Katherine said that night as she and Thomas sat on their porch, a tradition they had maintained through all the seasons of their life together. "Can you believe it has been 25 years since we got married?" 26 since you showed up in my barn," Thomas said with a smile. "The best night of my life, even if I did not know it at the time." "You knew," Katherine teased. "You must have known there was something special about finding a half-dead woman in your hay." "Oh, absolutely," Thomas played along. "I thought to myself, this is definitely the woman I am going to spend the rest of my life with." The blood and terror were particularly attractive. Katherine laughed, the sound as bright and clear as it had been all those years ago. "You are ridiculous." "And you love me anyway," Thomas said, pulling her close. "I do," Katherine agreed, settling into his arms with the ease of long practice. "I really, truly do." They sat together as the stars came out one by one, filling the Nevada sky with light. Inside the house, they could hear their family talking and laughing, the grandchildren running around while their parents tried to settle them down for the night. This was the life they had built together, the legacy they would leave behind. Not wealth or status, but love and family and the knowledge that they had lived well and truly. "You ever think about that night?" Thomas asked quietly. "About everything that could have gone wrong?" "Sometimes," Katherine admitted. "I think about how close I came to dying in that mansion in Reno. I think about how different my life might have been if you had not been brave enough to help me, if you had turned me away or turned me over to Victor's men. I think about all the ways our story could have ended badly. But it did not," Thomas said. "It ended like this, with us together, surrounded by family and love. That has to count for something." "It counts for everything," Katherine said. "It counts for a whole life, Thomas, a good life. The kind of life I never thought I could have." As they sat together under the stars, Katherine reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had started as a frightened 18-year-old making a terrible decision to marry a man she barely knew. She had endured years of abuse and pain that had nearly broken her spirit. She had found the courage to run, even though she had no idea where she was running to. And she had ended up in Thomas Morgan's barn, the luckiest place she could have possibly found herself. Because Thomas had not just given her shelter that night. He had given her hope, support, love, and the chance to build a new life. He had believed in her when she could not believe in herself. He had stood with her when it would have been easier to walk away. Their story, Katherine thought, was proof that it was never too late to change your life. That courage could be found even in the darkest moments. That love, real love, was possible even for people who had been broken by their pasts. "What are you thinking about?" Thomas asked, his voice warm in the darkness. "Everything," Katherine said. "Our life, our family. How grateful I am for every single day we have had together. Even the hard ones," Thomas asked. "Especially the hard ones," Katherine said. "Because those are the days that showed me what we are made of. The days that proved our love was strong enough to weather any storm. I would not trade a single moment of our life together, Thomas. Not one." The years continued to pass, bringing the inevitable changes that come with time. Thomas and Katherine's hair turned white, their hands grew wrinkled, their steps became slower. But their love remained constant, a steady flame that never dimmed. In the spring of 1915, as they sat on their porch watching another Nevada sunset, Thomas took Katherine's hand. "I have been thinking," he said, "about that first night when you told me you would stay for one night and then be gone." "I remember," Katherine said with a smile. "I meant it too. I really thought I would be gone by morning." "I am glad you stayed," Thomas said simply. "I am glad you took a chance on me, on us, on this life. You gave me everything, Katherine, everything that matters." "You gave me the same," Katherine said, squeezing his hand. "You gave me a life worth living. You gave me love and family and peace. You gave me myself back, the self I thought I had lost forever." They sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of purple and gold. Around them, the ranch buzzed with life. Horses in the paddock, cattle grazing in the distance, the sound of their grandchildren playing somewhere nearby. "Do you remember what I told you that first morning?" Thomas asked. "About what I wanted from life." "You wanted the ranch to thrive," Katherine recited from memory. "You wanted to build something that lasted, something you could be proud of. You wanted to know your work mattered. And you wanted someone to share it with, someone who understood that happiness comes from simple things. Good work, clear conscience, love freely given." "We did it," Thomas said, his voice full of wonder. "We built all of that together." "We did," Katherine agreed, tears of joy streaming down her aged face. "We really did." As the last light faded from the sky, Thomas and Katherine Morgan sat together on their porch, hands intertwined, hearts full. They had traveled a long and sometimes difficult road to reach this moment, but every step had been worth it. They had found in each other not just love, but partnership, respect, and the kind of deep connection that only comes from weathering life's storms together. Their story had started with a frightened woman seeking shelter for one night, and a kind man willing to offer it. It had grown into something neither of them could have imagined. A love story that would span decades, a family that would grow and flourish, a legacy of courage and compassion that would live on long after they were gone. And as the stars came out above the Nevada plains, shining down on the ranch Thomas had built and the life he and Katherine had created together, one thing was certain: this was not just a happy ending. It was a happy life, full and rich and real, earned through courage and sustained by love. It was everything either of them had ever wanted, and more than they had ever dared to dream. The end.